All right, so in this video, we are going to go over the adding and subtracting assignment. Remember, this is just a homework video. You need to make sure you watch the instructional video first. So to add and subtract fractions, you need a common denominator. I'm just going to label it CD for common denominator. Easiest way to get that is just to take both denominators, multiply them together in this case. 5 times 3 is 15. So our common denominator is 15. So then, of course, going back to your 4th grade examples, we need to multiply the bottom left here by 3 to get it to 15. And whatever you do to the bottom, you got to do to the top. Because ultimately, we're multiplying by 3 over 3, which is just 1. So this is going to be 6x over 15. The other one, we need to get it to 15, so we're going to multiply bottom and top by 5. So that gives us 15 at the bottom, and that gives us 20x at the top. Now we simply write the fractions over their common denominator and combine the like terms. 26 over 15, thinking real quick. Do they have a common term that goes into both? They do not. So that is our simplified answer. This one does not ask for restrictions, and it didn't have any anyway because there's no variables on the bottom. Question 3. So we look out on question 3 because we already have a common denominator. One thing to notice that I like to do on subtraction problems is to go ahead and distribute that subtraction symbol. Basically, we're going to make both of the terms on the right-hand side after the subtraction symbol opposite of what they originally were. So 3x becomes negative 3x, and negative 2 becomes positive 2. And then I simply change this subtraction sign that we started with to an addition sign. Because that's where a lot of the mistakes happen here. So our common denominator is 2x minus 5. And then we're going to add our like terms. So positive x plus negative 3x is negative 2x. And then positive 3 plus positive 2 is positive 5. You might notice the top can be factored technically because that lead coefficient is negative. So since the lead coefficient is negative, what we can do is we can factor out a negative. And we especially want to do it on this problem because we can see pretty quickly what's going to happen. Just those 2x minus 5s at the bottom, the 2x minus 5 at the bottom is going to cancel the 2x minus 5 at the top. Number 5. So we notice we've got something at the bottom left there to factor. So I want to go and factor that to x plus 7, x minus 2. I'm going to go and change this to an addition problem and move that negative symbol a little bit closer to the 2. I always like to do that so I don't forget about that subtraction symbol. All right, so this one's a little more complex. So to get our common denominator, it's all the factors at the bottom multiplied together. So I've got a 4x. I've got an x plus 2. And I've got an x minus 2. You don't actually need to multiply them together. So it's going to save us a lot of time. But this is our common denominator. So then you gotta ask yourself, okay, that common denominator and this first denominator, what's the difference? Well, the difference is this one over here doesn't have a 4x. So I need to give it a 4x. Whatever I do to the bottom, got to do to the top. So that's going to give us 16x over the common denominator.
The left fraction we're done with for now. Right fraction a little tougher because all it has is the 4x. It needs the x plus 7 and the x minus 2 so that it matches up with this common denominator. These have to look the same. So whatever I do to the bottom, got to do to the top. So in this case, we actually do need to multiply the top. And remember, the reason why is because the top, eventually, we're going to want to add our like terms together. And we can't add the like terms together when the problem is in factored form. So we need to multiply first x plus 7 times x minus 2 at the top. So you can do FOIL method, you can do distributive property, box multiplication, whatever works. But we end up with negative 2 times x squared plus 5x minus 14. We get x squared plus 5x minus 14 when we multiply x plus 7 times x minus 2. All over our common denominator. So now we need to distribute the 2, the top right there. So that's going to give us 16x over here on the far left. On the top right, we're going to get negative 2x squared minus 10x plus 28. Write that a little better. Add your like terms at the top. At this point, I'm not going to rewrite the common denominator just yet. Now that is technically on the bottom of all this, but I don't really need to do any math there. So I'm going to simplify the top here just a little bit further. This and this will combine. So we get negative 2x squared plus 6x plus 28 all over our common denominator. Now this one keeps going because now we need to factor the top to see if anything will cancel out with that common denominator. So I'm first going to notice there's a GCF of negative 2 that I can factor out. And I bet I can factor what's inside the parentheses one step further. So this right here is a trinomial. We're looking for two numbers that multiply. Well, can that be factored? I guess it can't. There's not two numbers that multiply together to give us negative 14 and add together to give us negative 3. So we actually can do one little bit of reducing. The negative 2 over 4 will reduce to negative 1 over 2. Don't really need to write that. Negative 1, but that's our answer. Then this final one. Subtraction problem, so change it to plus a negative. I'm going to go ahead and factor the top left just to see if anything will cancel out. It doesn't look like anything will. So typically we don't factor the numerators until the very end of the problem. All right, so nothing cancels out, so we need to get a common denominator. So it's everything at the bottom. So notice my common denominator is x plus 1 and x plus 4. I did not write x plus 1 a second time, because they already have the x plus 1 in common. See, we don't need to write that twice. Technically can, but it's just going to make more work for you. So, good news is this left denominator is already the same as the common denominator. So we don't have to do anything to that left-hand side. The right-hand side needs an x plus 4. So multiply bottom and top by x plus 4. I'm going to go ahead and distribute and add like terms at the top. And of course, this is all over our common denominator. This term's like, because it's 4x. This term and this term gives us positive 4. And then obviously we can factor 4x plus 4 by taking a 4 out. We want to do that because the x plus 1s are then going to cancel.